I am Sid.
And I'm Doc.
What's up, Doc?
What's up?
I had to do
I
it.
feel like I need a carrot, man.
I was doing that. Well, I would need the carrot. I was thinking that the
That's
whole
true.
time. I was like, I want to do it. What up, Doc? So yeah, we have settled on calling this show Alien Astronauts. We're going to want to discuss topics related to apocalyptic scenarios, the occult, alternative/speculative history, AI, and also things that may be deemed absurd to others, which, I mean, I guess all those could be deemed absurd to others.
Absurd to someone.
Depending on how grounded you are in solid, real, not real, your entire perceptions of the absurd can change completely.
We're all interested in something that's absurd to someone.
We all definitely should be, probably. So we have discussed that we want to talk about the apocalypse today. And while there is a very solid definition for the apocalypse and what it should be, our modern world has many different ideas on what an apocalyptic scenario would be. We have discussed three main categories that we feel an apocalypse could fall under. The first being a social apocalypse. These are things that purely affect humanity in terms of economic distress, political discourse, things that just affect humanity and could possibly lead to the end of humanity, such as electricity no longer being able to sustain us, or our sources of electricity.
Electricity is a big one, and no matter what kind of social apocalypse we might be looking at, chances are we're going to lose electricity. I mean, maybe permanently, maybe for a short term, but either way, that is definitely, to modern society, the loss of electricity is apocalyptic.
Yeah, pretty damn apocalyptic, yeah. Then we've got the second category, which we have deemed natural apocalypses. And by natural apocalypses, we don't mean naturally occurring. We mean an apocalypse that would have an effect on the natural world itself. And these can be things like, currently, one of the big fears is nuclear war. And I think since nuclear weapons were invented, I think that will remain a humongous fear for the entire world. Because even though they are engineered to destroy mass amounts of people and humans, they also can cause virtually irreparable damage to the natural world.
Well, and the same when you have effects of a nuclear war, you pretty much have, well, what's termed a nuclear winter at the very least, and it's the same effect globally as a huge asteroid slamming into the Earth.
Yeah.
So much soil and matter is displaced into the atmosphere. So either way, I think there have also been, there's also a lot of huge volcanoes that have erupted.
Yeah.
Have put enough matter into the atmosphere to where it's a slight nuclear winter,
I was actually just about to say that. It's on a much smaller scale than a huge fucking asteroid hitting or all-out nuclear war. We've seen volcanoes erupting and cover miles and miles in ash and debris from it.
Well, it's also into the upper atmosphere. There have been actual records since we've been recording light levels. There have been volcanic eruptions that globally affected the level of light that was getting in. Although it might have lasted, only 10 or 15 years, it's still
pretty damn shitty to live
for
through.
For a volcanic eruption, which is pretty small compared to what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah. And the third category that we discussed is a reality apocalypse. And this would be some event that completely disrupts what we deem reality. And that could be, you see a lot in religious texts and doctrine. We have the Christian apocalypse, which really begins with the rapture, Ragnarok. And in terms of something that's really popped up since the advent of the computer age, is this all a computer simulation? And in that case, the simulation ending would be a pretty damn instantaneous apocalypse. Just a mass deletion of everything. If we are indeed programs, which we're not. I'm not saying that we are, but of course it's definitely something to humor. So if you are, picture this, you're living in some small village next to a big old mountain, and one day the ground shakes, and from the mountain there spews tons of red, molten hot material, and smoke billows, and it blots out the sun. In the moment, before you knew that's a volcano, before you had an idea of that, that would be a reality-shaking event
Yeah.
for something like that to happen. And it definitely would very easily be tied into whatever doctrine you prescribed to in whatever hypothetical village. Another one that's also really interesting is because it's just such a big thing that could happen is the discovery of alien life, or perhaps alien life discovering us. There's a lot of media that is related to that, especially in video games. You know, all the aliens come and it's up to you, the protagonist hero, to defeat them. But that can occur in many different ways. I think definitely it could occur socially, possibly the easiest. If there is malicious intent behind any visitors, it could be a natural apocalypse. Let's take all their water.
Could be obvious malicious intent, which would result in a physical apocalypse. If there was some sort of aggression taken toward us, it could definitely be
aggression or just a lack of care.
Disregard.
Disregard for human life and just being like, look at all that water they got over there.
So when you were starting off the top, we started with different kinds of an apocalypse. Started with social, I believe, was the first we touched on there.
Yes.
And I think the social apocalypse is something really prevalent in today's society. The talk of it with the economic and political side of things, the economy seems to be reaching some sort of breaking point.
Yeah.
And it's all around the world. Inflation's gotten out of hand. Supply chains are threatened. The global economy seems to be taking a blow of some sort.
Not doing so good.
Even my stocks, man. I mean...
Yeah, I see so much shit, people talking about what's going on in the stock market. And it really made me do a complete 180 on thinking, wow, I really missed out on GameStop and crypto. And now it's like, oh, it's good that I didn't just decide, okay, it's time to get into that.
Yeah.
And then go through whatever the hell's going through now.
Yeah, I know some people that lost quite a bit in crypto.
Mm-hmm.
The cool thing is, for a while, they gained a lot. And even though they didn't sell, man, they were riding the wave. They were riding this. They felt good about it, and that's cool. I just wish a lot of them would have sold when it hit that peak.
Yeah, it's pretty sad, man. And it's got to feel absolutely terrible to have sunk a lot of money into these things, and now that they've plummeted, just be like, if I were to sell right now in this steadily decaying value, I'll only have a third of what I put into it. Yeah. And it's sad. And it would almost make you want to just hold out and be like, fuck, I'm already going to lose so much money that might as well, because who knows? Maybe if it makes a resurgence.
I am very bad at investing. Like I tell people, I'll talk about investing with people, but I have to tell them, don't take investment advice from me. Mm-hmm. I make some pretty bad investment choices. I guess the best one I've made is precious metals.
That is something, having a physical
silver. It is, but supposedly silver was a hedge fund against inflation. That when the value of the dollar went down, when inflation occurred, when the stock market fell, the value of silver would go up. Not true.
Shit.
It fell right along with everything else.
Damn.
Yeah.
So, definitely that would be a social apocalypse if something were to happen majorly to...
Economically.
Economically. Of course, the social apocalypse, the definition definitely has changed quite a bit, because speaking just socially, now that we are in a place in the world where we are completely connected to virtually every aspect of the world that can be connected to us, the prospect of a social apocalypse has definitely changed from way back. Once again, taking it back to, say you're in a village, a social apocalypse would be the death of your village. All the people, maybe it could be the as elders. Quick as you just don't get that much of a yield from the crop, which is pretty dark. But of course now, a social apocalypse, you still could have local things, but now the prospect of that is the entire world, our entire big village Earth could be demolished, and that's pretty freaky, man. Of course, they're all pretty freaky.
Along with the social apocalypse, a political apocalypse. I think here in the States, we've seen hints of that from a lot of different sides, and it's not just here. There's a lot of places that are seeing a political upheaval of sorts toward one way or the other.
Yeah. We've actually got it quite good here compared to some places
Yes,
that are going through
definitely.
some really terrible things.
Yep.
But in a few of those places, these terrible things are happening because it's for the greater good of humanity and acceptance. It's still sucks though. It's still got to be pretty terrible to go through that. So what you were talking about, you've been really into Graham Hancock. You want to touch on some of that?
Oh, well, his series, Ancient Apocalypse, I think is the name of it. It's a new series on Netflix, and there are 8 episodes, 30 minutes apiece. Honestly, it's a rundown of like the hot spots of a lot of his theory and a lot of his observations. I don't know if you're very familiar with Graham Hancock. A lot of his work is simply based around looking at history with fresh eyes.
With notions of what has happened and where
Yeah.
things did begin.
Yes, exactly. His whole thing, and he makes a very good case of it, that around the world you have these monolithic temples, these structures of stone columns, pyramids everywhere. Certain symbols appear throughout all of these. Of course, from Egypt to South America, Central America, there's Indonesia. He goes around the world, pyramids everywhere. And he thinks they're all pointing toward a period in time when some cataclysm happened on the earth.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but from my very limited exposure into the mystical realm of Graham Hancock, I've
That would be supernatural. It's a whole different book. Yeah.
it is one of the things that he proposes could be one of the reasons that we have these symbols and architectures that are very similar in Africa to South America, is because it's a hell of a lot older, these things are, than we currently think they are, and perhaps they were built when instead of continents we just had Pangea and all the continents were together, and that way is that a Graham Hancock thing?
No.
Okay, I don't know where the hell I got that from.
Okay, no, I understand where you're coming from, but Pangea was way back in the past. I'm talking way back in the past. Hancock, one of his recurring themes that comes across in his stuff a lot is that humanity is much older than we're taught it is, and that there is a lost civilization that was more advanced than the other nations and tribes of the time. There was an advanced civilization here at one time.
Almost like Atlantis?
Yeah. Well, Fingerprints of the Gods talks, his very first popular book is based in part around the idea of Atlantis. And that there's an apocalypse in and of itself, There was a very local apocalypse with Atlantis and maybe global. Some people think it goes back to the Great Deluge, the flood.
Especially a social apocalypse in the sense of, despite the fact that it very obviously didn't wipe out all of humanity, if this did happen, at the same time losing the pinnacle of scientific and technological advancements that would send all of humanity back to primitive tools and learning all of this over again is pretty damn apocalyptic. Yeah, I think in the show they find quite a few things underwater.
Very obvious indicator of how old something is when you find structures. There's plenty of pyramids they have found. Japan, India,
some in South America.
Bimini Road, I think, Hancock goes to, which is obviously some sort of road that was laid out. It's underwater. A lot of this stuff points to the fact that at a time in history, it was dry there. The waters weren't that high. So at times when the ocean levels were much lower, the coastal plains were at a different level. A lot of temples, a lot of pyramids and things were built along these plains.
Have now been lost to the ocean.
And it was during the last ice age when these things were built. A lot of the water of the earth was trapped in the poles. So after that ice age, these plains flooded. That's why a lot of this was lost.
Silly humans, they didn't know. It's just part of it. Maybe until we can get really far out, underwater submarine single-man suits, we'll never know what lies in the abyss.
We'll never know.
And that's a scary thing too, because spacesuits are cool, but to get underwater suits, not only do you have to prepare for the lack of being able to fucking breathe, but also there's shit down there that can really fuck you up.
Yeah.
If a shark sees you scuba diving down there, walking around like a little spaceman.
That's what we need. We need little submersible mechs.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Attach a Gatling harpoon gun to it.
Yeah.
And go look for those lost temples.
You're like Doom Guy on the ocean floor, man.
Yeah.
It's
Or like remember in that one Indiana Jones game on the original Xbox when you fight the Kraken? And you're swimming around and you've got that harpoon gun. Do you remember that? It was a boss battle.
One of the first boss battles? You're not talking about
Probably.
the alligator, are you?
No. Do
Okay.
you not remember that? You fight a whole ass
don't know.
Kraken, like throws shit at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool. I think you literally do find some lost temple, which I guess it has to be because that's the only way to excuse it currently being flooded.
Well, it better be apocalyptic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you remember that game does end up pretty apocalyptic.
It does.
That was it.
It was a good game.
That really was, man.
That's why I really enjoyed the puzzle aspects of it. The controls were pretty good. But I'm a big fan of the old Tomb Raider games.
Yeah.
And the Tomb Raider games, one of the things I liked was the puzzle aspects.
Yeah.
And that Indiana Jones game had kind of the same feel.
They dumbed down a little bit puzzles
Yeah.
for the more run and gun type of players, but
Yeah.
still very enjoyable. I think that's a great bridge to
Speaking of apocalyptic, the last Indiana Jones movie was pretty apocalyptic with the aliens and stuff,
Wow, man.
I guess Raiders of the Lost
That was like
Ark
Ancient Aliens, man.
Yeah, it was. It really was.
That's probably the most fucking whacked out Indiana Jones has ever gotten.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty cool.
I thought it was pretty cool. A lot of people didn't. I actually really liked it, though. And I think that's actually a great bridge. We discussed beforehand some media that kind of gets you in the mood for this apocalyptic voyage. So, of course, we got The Road. And while we don't know, it's a book and a movie. I've seen the movie. I have not read the book. I think, who was it? Harlan Ellison?
Is that a Harlan? No. No.
McCormick. Yeah.
Something like that.
Cormac McCarthy.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I read his
Harlan Ellison.
Blood Meridian, but I never read The Road. Very interesting writing style, by the way. While we don't know as viewers what happened in The Road, and I think that is very much makes it that much greater of a movie, it is very obvious that whatever the hell happened also to the natural world, because that is such a bleak movie, not in terms of just content, but also in just the world that it takes place in. It's a really dark movie. Of course, I had to put down Fallout because that is one of the pinnacle post-nuclear apocalypse things.
Good.
Of course, there's probably one of the most famous proposals for the apocalypse, the zombie apocalypse. I don't even think we really need examples for that. The Walking Dead, Zombieland, 28 Days Later.
My problem with the zombie apocalypse has always been, of all the apocalypses possible, it's not very likely. Like, I understand the appeal of it and the horror of it, but how likely is it there's going to be some sort of infection that turns,
People into
3/4 of humanity
stupid
into
cannibals.
brain-eating zombies,
Yeah.
or that an asteroid's going to slam into the Earth?
Yeah.
It's probably more likely an asteroid's going to slam into the Earth, and that's
Definitely.
That's yeah.
You know what we didn't get? What was that movie, Don't Look Up, with the one guy that plays the bad guy in Django? What's his name? No, we watched
DiCaprio?
it. Yeah. That was really good.
It was really
That was
good.
a really great movie, yeah.
It made some good points, too.
It was funny as shit.
It was. DiCaprio's pretty good.
It made some really great points because you could see a lot of the arguments and counter arguments in the movie were also drag and drop. You could drag it into a lot of social things that are going on, and especially were going on in the world at the time. The Mist. You've seen The Mist, right?
Yeah. Stephen King?
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, man, great movie. And I would put that in a reality
I would
apocalypse
put that in
because
a reality. It's very Lovecraftian.
very
like,
cosmic horror,
yeah.
and the nature of cosmic horror has always been something that shifts reality. And it's really easy to get caught up in when you try and create cosmic horror to just throw in tentacles and weird geometry, and it's like, oh, that's cosmic horror. It's like, oh, maybe. But what made Lovecraft so spooky is when Lovecraft came out, horror was like vampires, werewolves, witches, and whatever the fuck Poe had that was horror.
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein when?
I think Frankenstein came out in the late 1800s.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, yeah. That
So.
lines up then. Yeah.
I might be completely wrong on that.
I was gonna
Right.
say Dracula. I said vampires. So I was like, I don't know when.
Yeah,
I don't really know when Dracula came out.
that's sad.
What's older, Dracula or Nosferatu? What's?
Nosferatu.
I mean, not which vampire is older, but like which story is older? Of course, vampires are very old in general.
Oh, get the vampire apocalypse.
The vampire apocalypse,
No
fucking
shit.
I Am Legend,
Zombie vampire apocalypse.
zombie vampire apocalypse. That zombie vampire monster apocalypse. That's like worst
Nazi
case scenario.
Zombie vampire
Robot
monster
apocalypse.
apocalypse.
Mecha zombies. Yeah, that's pretty far out. Onto more reality style apocalypses. I think the most, while it not necessarily deemed by a lot of people as an apocalyptic movie, The Matrix. Because it is something that would and does shake the foundation of reality itself. Now, there is still a reality after the apocalyptic scenario, which would be the Matrix failing or you waking up from the Matrix, but it completely changes the rules and it completely changes the name of the game, essentially.
Well, it's a very powerful example of a reality apocalypse because it's hard to completely dismiss. If you really understand the movie, I hate that the movie was seen as a special effects extravaganza.
It definitely was.
It definitely was. It changed. It
still holds
the
up quite a bit of
effects
this.
bar. It raised that bar, but at the same time,
Because they weren't special effects.
They weren't special effects.
They were just effects.
That's Keanu, man.
It's Keanu. It's the power. He really is Neo.
It really is.
Yeah, The Matrix is such a great example, and especially for the time that it came out, when computers were super fucking new.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden this
I mean, I think
primitive...
Neo was operating on a fucking dial-up modem. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, no shit. You take one look at the way the computers look in The Matrix, and oh yeah, that's what the year 19 whatever the fuck thought that the year. Well, I don't know. Did they ever say what year the real world is in The Matrix?
80, 90.
No, the real world.
No, yes, they did, but I don't remember. I'm thinking it was like 38,000
or 3,800.
Yeah.
So we also got, of course,
the Warhammer 40K apocalypse.
That'd be fucking terrible, man. The warp. Oh my
that
god.
Would be terrible.
I think from all futuristic media dealing with anything badass like Warhammer 40K would be one of the fucking worst timelines you could end up in because everybody's fucked.
Yeah,
man.
yeah, everybody's fucked.
Everybody's fucked.
Yeah, unless you're a fucking cyborged up space marine killing
even if you are, man, there's wars.
That's the best you could have it.
You could be an orc probably.
Yeah.
Because the orc don't give a fuck.
You could be a fucking the Skaven there.
Are the Skaven in
that's
40K?
That's fantasy. It's Warhammer fantasy. I don't think they're a Skaven in.
Yeah, well, you listeners that know more about Warhammer 40K than us, tell us if there's Skavens in 40K. we also got In the Mouth of Madness.
Which is interesting because we were talking about Warhammer, In the Mouth of Madness, and there's a connection there, but we can talk about that after we talk about In the Mouth of Madness.
Yeah, so In the Mouth of Madness, of course, follows, spoiler alert, If you haven't seen In the Mouth of Madness, it's kind of your fault.
Yeah, it's John Carpenter's one of his very
it's
best.
my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah.
It follows. Is he an insurance investigator?
He's
the main guy.
He is a detective for an insurance company. Yep.
And he is investigating an author that has disappeared, I believe.
Yes.
Sutter Kane.
Sutter Kane.
And make a long story short, at the end of the movie, you don't get any answers. You don't know what the fuck's going on, but reality is way fucked up. People are changing into these weird things. It's very Lovecraftian. And the main character gets out of the insane asylum. He walks into a movie theater. There's people like going crazy all around him. And he sits down in the movie theater with his popcorn. He starts eating it, and the movie starts. And he's watching In the Mouth of Madness, and he's watching himself. And the last shot of the movie, I believe, is just him sitting in the theater, just hysterics.
Cackling.
Yeah, just cackling.
Yeah.
So were you wanting to tie that into Warhammer?
Well, it was interesting. You know, Sam Neill is the lead in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Really like Sam Neill in most of his stuff. He's also the lead in
Event Horizon.
He's also the lead in Event Horizon that wasn't a John Carpenter film, but it felt a lot like a science fiction version of In the Mouth of Madness.
It feels a lot like Warhammer.
So
there's a pretty popular fan theory that it is humanity's first encounter with the warp.
That it is a Warhammer 40K movie.
Mm-hmm. That is one fucked up movie, man.
It is a fucked up movie.
It's good. No, I think
not as fucked up as that Meshuggah video.
Where we are
That's
right
a
now in
fucking
time and
wicked
space,
video.
Meshuggah just released the AI visualization video for They Move Below. You should really check that out. It's an instrumental, so if you don't if you don't dig growls too much, you'll probably still be able to enjoy it. It's great music, and holy shit, that is like H.R. Geiger's wet dream.
It is. It's Escher meets.
That is, Escher and H.R. Geiger had a wet dream together, and H.P. Lovecraft wrote about it. That's what that would be.
Yeah.
It is so fucking far out. It's my favorite video they've done.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite videos.
Awesome. We actually wrote that down for apocalyptic music. But we touched on, that was the only thing I could think of was
That's
Meshuggah.
a tough one.
A lot of their lyrics don't really fall into apocalypse, but in terms of how heavy it is fucking apocalyptically heavy. Apocalyptically, is that a word?
Apocalyptically.
Apocalyptically. He walked apocalyptically.
Apocalyptical. Is it apocalyptical?
Apocalyptical. So one common thing you see a lot in discussions of the apocalypse is the four horsemen of the apocalypse, which is war, famine, death, and pestilence. What do you think about that?
I don't know, man. I'm very familiar with those.
Mm-hmm.
Do
you think the idea is all four have to be present for that they are not four horsemen of apocalypse?
I think you will see them come across the earth at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the idea. But when we're getting the four horsemen of the apocalypse, you're getting into something else we haven't really discussed. We're talking about apocalyptic viewpoints and different perspectives and different ways of seeing things. You could have the religious perspective and the atheist perspective. There are two different opposing views on. And the four horsemen of the apocalypse is obviously a Christian reference, and it's the book of Revelation. There's a lot to understand there in the book itself before I think they can even be seen in.
Yeah, and
context.
Especially back then, like we were talking about earlier with social apocalypses then and now, a war is definitely fucking apocalyptic. Yeah. And war, of course, leads to death, and both of those, of course, lead to famine. Pestilence, probably, the filth of war and infection. I mean, shit, dude, if you're as far back as like fucking World War I, if you get your foot cut, fucking leg's gonna fall off.
I think when the references to the Four Horsemen was written, pestilence was a huge threat. You could lose everything. I think now we don't worry about that so much because we've got some really poisonous shit we can just spray all over the plants and the ground and in the air to keep the bugs away.
Yeah.
You know?
Damn, maybe that is
That's where
pestilence.
just-
Maybe pestilence just rides a really slow pony.
So
And we're
much.
we're spraying pestilence on our crops.
There you
And
go.
the horseman war is, God fucking damn it. When are they gonna throw nukes at each other? I've been trying so hard. Famine's like, this motherfucker's got so many artificial food products. Death has always been there, and pestilence is like, yeah, I'm playing the slow game, motherfucker. When they get all this plastic, when all that creeps into their reproductive systems,
Yeah.
there you go. That is definitely something, a slow apocalypse.
The
It's
slow-
so many.
I mean, but it's not so apocalyptic if it's slow.
It's not so theatric. It's
not.
theatrical.
And it's not good for television.
It's not. You want your apocalypse
you
to
want
be
your
beautiful.
apocalypse
don't
to
you?
hit hard.
You want it
man.
to be beautiful,
Yeah,
don't
you do.
Yeah, you want it to be the season
Yeah.
finale.
Nobody wants to go out with a whimper.
What about a peaceful apocalypse? Now, once again, there is a definition for apocalypse.
I think that's
but
very.
it's
It's a
changed
very. It's a
lot.
very Buddhist concept. Peaceful
Or,
apocalypse.
well, especially finding peace in
Yeah.
an apocalyptic
Yeah,
event.
the peaceful apocalypse is an individual thing. Definitely.
I personal apocalypse. And I think a lot of people go through these, and I think a lot of people go through many of these.
Mhm.
It can be really bad depression. It can be a fucking anxiety attack. It can be just an apocalypse of yourself, pretty much. And they can definitely feel like that. And
They can also go the other way too.
I'm
you know,
not
they're
sure I follow.
there are personal apocalypses you have where you could have a fucking mental or an emotional breakdown. You could have physical breakdown. You know, there are things you go through that change your life. And I also think there's the more mystical side of it. I think there
Which can often be more subtle.
can be more subtle, but it can be a change of your worldview that is done on purpose by you that allows you to.
Apocalyptic enlightenment.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, you know, an apocalypse is something that changes the world. And if it only changes the world for you, it still changed the world for you.
It has still changed the world.
It still changed the world.
That is, yeah, it's a really,
It's changed your world.
it's a really beautiful way to say that. So and not to get too morbid, but I think, I'm not proposing that it does, but I think a lot of personal apocalypses can lead to acts of extreme violence and aggression. Especially here in the States, we have a lot of aggression and we have a lot of violence that happens day in, day out. It's easy to become desensitized to all the violence and messed up shit in the news. And I think some of that, at least, could possibly stem from people experiencing something internally that disrupts them in such a way that they feel that they don't have any vehicle to release it, and therefore they release it through aggression. I don't want to say that any mass acts of aggression are because of that, but it's possible. And I think a lot of that just comes from us trying to rationalize what would lead somebody to do something that fucked up. And surely, hopefully, it would have to be a total fucking extreme apocalyptic event. I think we all hope that. I think that if something really fucked up were to happen, we all hope that it is due to something fucking huge that happens internally. And I don't know. Then there's also, we discussed briefly, shit like Heaven's Gate and Jonestown.
Yeah.
Okay, to get into that, I want to touch more on what you said about personal apocalypses, that even if it just happens inside of you, it still changes the world. It's the true definition of apocalypse that we have taken. It's like decimation. When someone says, I decimated the enemy team, I didn't kill every 10th one.
Yeah.
You know, you fucking demolish them. And I think a lot of apocalypse now is a term that is needed to describe many more things than it would have been used for. And for something to happen, especially in terms of a cult, to fully subscribe to an ideology to the sense that you're going to drink that Kool-Aid or you're going to do that thing and all die together and wait for that spaceship, you have to have gone through a world reality changing event internally, at least. And so through that, we see from the Kool-Aid, which is really Flavor Aid. Okay, nobody jump on my ass for saying Kool-Aid. Okay, I know they didn't drink Kool-Aid. It was Flavor Aid. But that is, I mean, holy shit, man. That was pretty fucked up. I've been listening to actually quite a few podcasts on that. Yeah, that's my synopsis on it is, damn, that's fucked up. Also, of course, Heaven's Gate. Well, there's quite a few.
Yeah, quite a few smaller ones, less popular ones.
Mm-hmm.
So they drank Jonestown. They drank Flavor Aid.
Yeah.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yeah, they always say it was Kool-Aid, but
That's right, because at Woodstock, the Kool-Aid had the acid in it.
yeah.
Yeah. So you don't want to drink that Kool-Aid. You don't want to drink the Flavor Aid. So
Do you? Depends on what bands were at Woodstock.
it depends on what bands were playing.
Yeah.
Depends on what night it was.
If you get there
know?
for Jimi Hendrix, then maybe you do want to drink the Kool-Aid.
Cool.
Or Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
Were they at Woodstock?
Yeah.
Or the Woodstock? I think
Woodstock was like the hippie apocalypse, man.
That was the apocalypse for the non-hippies.
It was apocalypse for the non-hippies.
It's really easy talking about just world-changing events and things that can shake up everything that you once loved about life. It's very easy to end up terrified of that. I mean, it can lead you down a dark path. It can lead you to just being terrified every moment.
Yeah.
And every time maybe you look at the news, you're just absolutely horrified. As much as we want to tell ourselves and tell others, oh, it won't happen. It's all just, I mean, it could. And I hate to say that, but what's really helped me is, especially with all the fear now of a nuclear annihilation, is when you see those nukes on the news and you know you've got minutes left, don't even fucking worry about it. Because there's nothing at that point you can do about it. Don't dig your holes. If you've got a hole, maybe you already go down in there. I'm not saying do.
Hobbits always have holes.
Hobbits always have holes, so they'll probably be good. So we'll probably still have the Baggins around. The Shire might be not as pretty after nuclear apocalypse, but it's just beautiful to recognize there's nothing that you can do about it. And if the world goes out like that, I think it'd be best to go being the happiest motherfucker and thinking, I am infinitely more happy than those people that are throwing these weapons that they can't even comprehend the full extent of the damage.
I'm asking the question of how the fuck do we get in a situation where these few dumbass, power-hungry, greedy people have the ability to destroy life as we know it?
Yeah.
How in the fuck do we as humanity get to this point to begin with?
Yeah. What the fuck justifies that?
What's scarier, though, we haven't talked about yet.
Ooh.
This is the scary one. This is what's always concerned me. And it may seem stupid, but it's AI. I think AI is a great threat.
Well, if you talk about it like that, it might be a great threat. But if you treat it like the good folk and like the fairies, maybe the AI will think, this person's cool.
You just need to stop while you're ahead, man.
I totally cut you off there. What were you getting into about an AI apocalypse?
You watched a couple Terminator movies and you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, shit, you watched Terminator,
The
Matrix.
I'm just saying there's so much fiction that's been written. I really think science fiction is prophetic in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah, fantasy can't be very prophetic.
It can be.
Yeah, but without getting in the realm of science fiction.
Yeah, that's a different argument. You should read Hyperion, man. It's like, I'm telling you, it's really good science fiction.
No, I really want to get back into Cosmic Trigger because I read like maybe a third of it, and I really fucking liked it.
Yeah, it's really
and then just never picked it up again.
Wilson talks a lot too in Cosmic Trigger Volume 2, and in other books, he refers to that first Cosmic Trigger book and says, I was doing a lot of ass at the time. Like,
well, it comes across great.
It really does.
One time, I read, it could have been something from Ram Dass, and I could be wrong about that. It was an anecdote, very briefly, and it was this man walks into a store, and he goes up to the clerk, and he says, have I ever been here before? And the clerk looks at him and says, no, I don't think you have. And the guy says, well, then how do you know it's me? For so long, I've been trying to get back to that place when I first read that, of just understanding that I reached when I first read that.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so profound. Because now it's like, oh, I get it. So you haven't seen me, so how do you know it's me?
It's kind of the same of the Zen master that went to the bank to withdraw some money, and they were
You should have given me your
"Can
fucking
you
money."
identify yourself?" The teller asks, "Can you identify yourself?" And he pulls out a mirror and he looks at it, and it's him, and he's like, "Yep, that's me."
Zen Master did not get to make his withdrawal that day.
He probably didn't, but you know,
Dude, I've fucking been here since goddamn 9. My kid is sick, and you and your fucking robes come down here. God, that is one thing I loved so much about. I'm just gonna go ahead and plug them. We are great fans of the podcast Live from Chapel Perilous with Leroy and Maz. That is a great thing that they point out in one episode. Show me the holy man that works a job and lives a normal life and doesn't live up in this holy mountain and drink from the sacred spring and bathe in the waters of the divine every day. It's like, show me that man and show me his teachings, and then it'll seem a bit more plausible. Or not plausible, it'll be something that everybody can reach. And I was like, wow, it's really cool.
it's really cool. But I think those people are amongst us. We just don't see them. You take the sage from the mountain, and you give him 2 kids, you give him a mortgage, you give him a car payment, you give him a full-time job, and all of a sudden he's not the sage anymore. If he was really a sage to begin with, yes, he's still the sage. You might not see him the same because you're thinking he's got a job, he's got a car, he's got kids and a house payment. He's not a sage. Maybe to him, he's still the sage.
And maybe not.
Yeah.
It's what is, you can, paraphrasing, but you can be a Zen master without ever knowing, without ever practicing Zen.
Yeah. I always
That's
like
really
to
cool.
say, I've always tried to humble myself more. I remember a realization I had very early on when I got interested really in Zen and Taoism. I remember talking with one of my uncles, and later on it occurred to me, there's this guy out here somewhere on a tractor plowing a field that instinctively is more in tune with the Tao and the Dharma of the Buddha than I'll ever be. And he doesn't even know what any of that means.
That's fucking beautiful.
So you never know where a master is.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with what he professes to be or anything,
Yeah, that's really beautiful. That's really cool. You seen that shit? People cutting shit. You know what a water jet is?
You mean a cutting tool?
Yeah.
For cutting stone and stuff?
Yeah. Well, you see people cut fucking cameras in half,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Oh, look at this camera."
Yeah.
It's always people that like work with one. It's like, that's a really cool little tool there.
It is.
Rapid erosion.
I thought you were talking about those water jet packs for a minute. Remember those water jet packs?
Yeah.
Where people are on the...
I remember when that first came out. It was like, "Well, dude, it's like real life Iron Man."
What about the superhero apocalypse?
No, it's actually cool you bring that up. So I wrote down, and I thought there's no way I'll ever be able to bridge it into this. But talking about superheroes and of course leads into comic books, I jotted down Army of Darkness. I think that's so of course there's the movies. I had quite a few of the comics growing up. So fun fact, before I understood comics, and I understood there are different series in comics, and some of them are like alternate retelling, some of them are far future, far past. I thought they were all the same fucking series. So I'd have all these different mix and match issues of the comics, and I would think they were all part of the same series, and I was like, how the fuck does it get from here to here to here? But that is one pretty common depiction of the apocalypse, is some ancient deity / demon is disturbed and invokes its wrath upon Earth and humanity.
My question is, how was he disturbed? How was it disturbed? And how is it held docile for so long without being disturbed.
Do you mean Army of Darkness or just in general?
I'm just saying in general.
Because in Army of Darkness, it's all just Ash being a fucking ash. Ash, you know? Yeah, that's also very similar to Lovecraftian horror, which is you have these ancient beings beyond our comprehension.
Fucking Cabin in the Woods.
Fucking
That was such a good movie,
Did you say Cabinet in the Woods?
Cabin in the Woods.
That was a phenomenal movie, man. That was really good.
It really was.
It was so easy. I think I was hanging out with one of my buddies a few months ago, and we were on our way to a concert, and it was Between the Buried and Me and Car Bomb. Because I have to fucking say that. If anybody out there likes Between the Buried and Me and Car Bomb, you fucking rock, and so do those bands. And we were talking about horror movies on the way back, and I mentioned Cabin in the Woods, and he was like, "You see, man, like, I don't know, this is a little, like, cheesy." And I was like, "No, dude, it is cheesy for a fucking reason." Like, when you start the movie, and you're watching it a bit, and you get, like, maybe a quarter of the way through, and you're like, dude, this is the most cliche, cheesy shit. There's a reason for that.
There's a reason it's cliche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fucking awesome, man. Yeah, I really like shit like that kind of takes all these tropes and gives the tropes themselves lore, to where there's a reason for the stupid decisions. There's a reason for, like, when the characters randomly get horny in the middle of the fucking zombies, you know, with the pheromones coming out of the ground and shit. I was like, that's fucking great. But yeah, no, that's a really great movie.
Sexual apocalypse.
The sex apocalypse. The sex apocalypse. It sounds like something some weirdos would come up with that have a severe disdain for the freedom of modern life. Oh, it's the sex apocalypse. Alex. They're making me horny.
These frogs. I can't quit fucking frogs. It's Alex Jones.
I can't quit fucking frogs. I can't go back to the Petco or the PetSmart or the... Been banned from 24 national parks. Sex apocalypse. Now that's a way to... Censor. Back to the show. Holy shit. Okay. All right, and the best part about doing a podcast like this is we just took would you say it's 5-10 minute break?
Yeah.
And you, the listener, didn't. So that's cool. We could have taken an hour break, and you would have been none the wiser had I not brought this up. Unless there's some weird thing with you can tell if you're really listening. Some weird
ambience, the room, the revert, something that's different.
Yeah. That audio file would be, I can't fucking listen to this.
I imagine we would sound different because we just came in from outside and the air is much colder out there, and maybe our vocal cords themselves are
crystallized with ice.
Ice
apocalypse. Well, okay. So this is what I was thinking of. I couldn't remember the name of it. I had to look it up just now. Rip Van Winkle. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, Rip Van Winkle.
So I'm only familiar. I had to do quite a few discussions on it in one of my classes in college. And of course, if you're not familiar, Rip Van Winkle was a story of a man that slept through...
He's a time sleeper.
He's a time sleeper. He slept through the Civil War. And is that right? Was it the Civil War with the British? Oh my God.
Dude.
Oh no.
Dude.
Oh no. Not
that
the Civil War.
That was World War II, man.
The Revolutionary War. That's what I was going for. Not the Civil War. He slept through the Revolutionary War, and he wakes up in a completely different world almost. So it's funny. He comes back and he goes to his old bar. He doesn't really know what's going on. And he starts talking about the king. And everybody's like, what the fuck? A fucking spy, a traitor. A loyalist. Yeah. You know, it's kind of funny. Eventually everybody's like, holy shit, it's Rip. It's Rip Van Winkle. He just slept through the whole goddamn thing. Is it possible to do that internally with something that happens to you or around you? Is it possible to just, that maybe the world changes but you don't?
You know, the whole time travel thing that I always enjoyed, classic American literature, Mark Twain.
I thought you were about to plug Past Watch: The Redemption of Christopher Columbus again. For the listeners that are familiar, Doc has long-standing record sheet of always recommending that I read past Watch the Redemption of Christopher Columbus. So yeah, that got me thinking a little bit. What would it look like what would it be like, hypothetically speaking, of course, to live in a post-time apocalypse reality? I don't mean time's fucked up once and then it's back. Of course that would be pretty fucked up, but I mean if the structure and the flow of time is forever disrupted in some weird way, what would it be like to live in that? So what if something like that happens and you go back 5 years into the past and you repeat every action you ever made and you're conscious, as I am now, I'm currently not in control. I can't control what I'm doing. I am just reliving it, but I'm conscious of it. And when you get back to that point in time where the original catalyst happened that sent time back, instead of coming out the other end, you go back again. And this time it's 2 layers that you're experiencing. And it just keeps going until your own brain and your own mind can't keep up with it. And I mean, either you devolve into just whatever the fuck, or it's just you die.
You have to become that creature. You have to become that creature that lives in 12,000 different timelines at the same time.
Yeah.
Have you seen Hamilton?
I watched maybe about half of it.
Yeah,
I liked it. It's fucking long.
Yeah,
I thought it was really well done. If I could go see any Broadway musical, I would go see Sweeney Todd. I've actually watched a couple Broadway performances of Sleep. Let me try that again. It was at this point in the show that Sid and Doc got so far off topic that I figured the best way to cut this down would be to edit out all the off-topicness and leave you with a couple remnants of just how far we got.
I fucking love cats.
Yeah.
I fucking love seeing those kitties, man.
The next years until the village met its demise at the hands of the war.
That's not the story of Fiddler on the Roof.
That's not the story?
No.
Man, we have gone way from the apocalypse topic. We have strayed way far from that. Yeah, this is our first episode of Alien Astronauts. My name is Sid.
I'm Doc.
And we've talked a little bit about apocalypses, which is pretty fucked up. And we've also strayed into some other territories, which was really fun. Hope you enjoyed the video. And there's definitely more to come. Feel free to like or subscribe or leave a comment for us, and I'll try and get back to it. And if you have any topics that you'd like to see us discuss, please recommend them to us through the comments or email or any other way you can contact us, and we will quite possibly do them someday. We really hope you enjoyed it. You have anything you want to add?
I didn't know I was going to be able to add anything. I
put you on the spot.
Of something.
You get all bashful.
Put me on the spot.
Yeah, so I think that just about wraps it up. So stay tuned till next time, and we'll see what's what.
We love you.
We love you, and we'll cherish you always. Bye-bye.